Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 185 of the Pika Serenity podcast. I am, as always, one of your hosts, emallson, and joining me, we have my co host, Anomoly.
Hello.
And this week, 10 to 2 to 5. Well, kind of. It comes out next week, but we're talking about it this week because we got all the announcements about it. And also, some other stuff like Ruby Sanctum's coming out this week in Wrath, which you're playing. Some stuff happening in Season of Discovery that we'll briefly talk about.
So excited.
And of course, our progression on Tindral, the end boss, secret end boss, whatever you want to call it, of the tier. Fyrakk is apparently easier from what I've been told. Not to underestimate it, but like Tindral takes
Nice.
people longer.
Awesome. I can't wait. I can't wait. Yeah, it's been we got a kind of a crazy show, but I guess we can jump into progression wise. How is your progression going, Emerson?
Uh, we're it's feeling honestly for as slow as the prog can be. It feels good because it feels like we're steadily improving. It's such a weird fight, right? Normally,
Hmm.
these kind of like 30-second instant group wipe kind of fights are just miserable, right?
Yeah.
Or something you think of like Fate Scribe, right? Where you are 2 minutes into the fight and somebody doesn't get to their line in time, or they stupid hitbox on those lines, right? They get clipped
Yeah.
by the hitbox, they die, and you can't recover, and the raid's just dead. And that felt awful. That sucked.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know, something about this, like Halandris kind of deal, where like I don't know if it's it's kind of bullshit, but it also feels a lot fairer than
Yeah.
something like that. Like Halandris was the ultimate fair fight. That is the fairest fight that has ever existed. Uh, but any mistake just killed you, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like I've been
Yeah.
playing a this action platformer game this a lot this week called Sanabi, and I've been doing a playthrough on the highest difficulty, which is literally that. It's just like the fairest experience you will ever have. But get hit by anything and you're dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that can be a lot of fun. It's definitely not something that I think every fight should be. But it's definitely like I started off kind of lukewarm on it, and it's definitely grown on me as we have pulled this boss. So we are at the point where we're like midway through phase two, where we've gotten through the second seeds one time, died immediately after to dispels, but one
Nice.
time we made it through the second seeds.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, no, we're right around the same point. I think we've seen that third dispel probably like two or three times. And gets it up to the final seed. So no, and I would agree. I think I was very down on this fight like the first night of sort of just learning positioning and sort of you wipe a lot early on. But um it's one of those fights where you because of how I'll say like not yeah, because of how strict the sort of the way you deal with mechanics is and the timing of the mechanics is very much the same every time.
Yeah,
There's an essence of like learning the pattern, right?
yeah,
And so like having some sort of like, you know, not a joy is like the wrong word, but you like appreciate when your team learns the pattern and
yeah,
like now like P1 joke, or like, you can sort of joke around and talk through P1 and then get serious when you go into P2.
yeah.
um, yeah, you mentioned Halandris is sort of like a parallel fight that I think is very similar to Tindral. I think I'd agree. In our prog, the only differences is like Halandris intermissions were not chill. Like they were the
Yeah,
opposite of chill as specifically as like a healer and like maybe they were chill for like DPS because
that
we
fight
just sort
was
of
nonstop. That is true.
yeah, because like the actual phase is like P2, which is what we're both progressing right now. Is like a sort of like an all out
Just
sprint
go, go,
essentially.
go, go, go.
Yeah,
Phase one is very much the same. Like you're going, you're going, you're going. You're 45 seconds into the fight, but it feels like you've been there for 2 minutes.
oh yeah,
Kind of,
yeah,
kind of
exactly.
craziness. But like we were talking a little bit before the podcast, like the intermissions where you're dragon riding,
Yeah,
much more chill in comparison. The supernova, again, a lot more chill. The boss just stands there and you beat the crap out of him. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
And timing wise, it's really easy. I think now like there's still like the fun from an intermission perspective, at least for me, is like essentially being the fastest one to the platform,
Yeah.
right? So like getting my feather early and like hitting the right timings with like using the different speed bursts you have. So
Yeah,
um
I've been trying to figure out where I need to stand to not get my feather yoinked because I'm playing a Death Knight, and if my feather gets yoinked, um, I'm gonna be late.
yeah,
So
no,
I have,
that is a oh, sorry.
I've been trying. One thing I've been trying recently is, or like the last few polls that we had on Friday was, uh, I had Death Advance, so I don't get pushed by the wind. So after the fire beams come out, I go back towards
Mhm.
where the fire beams are coming from because I could just
Nice.
dodge them super easily, even with the winds. So
That's awesome.
that's what I'm trying now. But yeah, it's certainly a fight. Um, it's and like we were talking before, like the healing cooldowns for this fight is something we're both we both kind of settled on the same strategy, which is to kind of do it as we go.
Yeah.
Um, kind of feel it out and move things around, and yeah, it's
It's working-ish, I'll say, for us.
yeah,
Uh, yeah. No, yeah. I think the only thing we set up going in was just the P1 stuff. So we'd
yeah,
P1 pretty much locked down. We rotated or moved. Maybe like my revival got moved essentially to the start,
yeah.
to an early part of P2, because we didn't need as much as P1. So,
I
but yeah, no, it's been a sort of at kind of by the seat of your pants type thing there.
yeah, I put all of the cooldowns in phase one, which
Mhm.
normally not an issue because it is around 2 minutes like long.
Yeah.
So that naturally kind of works out. Except Holy Priest with their 3 and like 4 minute cooldowns.
Yeah. They're awkward, dude. They're so
Yeah,
awkward.
they're super awkward. Everything else is like mostly fine, but just
Mhm.
the Holy Priest stuff. We gotta probably at some point figure some things out there where like maybe we move one of the cooldowns out into phase two. But then if you do that, you only get like one use because the fight's 7 minutes long.
Right.
Like maybe you can him, but then I don't know. It's kind of a mess.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was our other problem too, is like how much do we hold in P1 for P2, and then yeah, making sure we have stuff for P3. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how we handle P3 once we start getting there. But
Yeah,
it also see the other thing that the fight has, and maybe one more thing, and then we can sort of move on, at least from my side, is it has the distinction of having like just a bad overlap part in every phase.
yeah,
And so like it's to me that is slightly annoying, but I guess at the same time you kind of need that because like, the P1 bad overlap is essentially the second roots, right? Where you're
yes,
moving from fire beam and then you have to root and there's still the fire beams coming through. And then in P2 it's the like soaks into roots into dispel, like that sort of second set of times the mechanics come
yeah,
through is like super super frustrating. So I just like high damage, high just individual movement. So
yeah, yeah.
um but yeah, we I will say we've had to ban in P2 well, roll from myself, can't roll anymore.
For
And
the
hover
seeds,
from our evokers. Yeah.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
definitely been I think the first time we hit the second seeds of P2,
You rolled through how many
I
seeds?
rolled out just two.
Just
Just
two?
two.
Just two.
But I definitely rolled out to try and get a far seed, and I didn't realize there was another seed in between me and that
Yeah.
seed, and hit both of them. So
Yeah, we're so like how we're trying to handle seeds, and like maybe this lines up with how you guys are doing it is like most people are trying to um soak from the outside in. So like we get the ones that
mhm.
are farther away, and then we get the inner ones. And we found a flaw in that approach. Namely that if there's one under the boss and you do outside in and then the melee come back in, very easy for them to trigger the one under the boss.
Yeah.
So a little bit of like, I don't know, inverse donut, whatever you want to like get the stuff on the
Okay.
boss, get the stuff that's far away, and then like that leaves you the middle ones so they're easy to dodge and easier to clean up, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, we had that's we're getting to the point that like our first seeds are pretty consistent, and then our second seeds, like I said, we made it through it once.
Yeah.
And a lot of our issue actually getting through the second seeds is just deaths, right?
Yeah.
Um, apparently it spawns fewer seeds at a rate of like for every two people dead, you get one fewer seed, but that's still like you have fewer people to do
Still tough. Yeah.
seeds. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, our issue. So we're not doing outside in. We're doing quadrants. So like we
Yeah.
basically split up half the boss because you have about 180 degrees
Yeah.
that you have seeds will spawn. So there's like a set of people that are in each quadrant, responsible for each quadrant, and then we have two floaters plus the tank. So
Yeah.
basically, four people float, and then everybody else has a set quadrant to soak in. But our biggest, other than some double soaks, which we've figured out, we also figured out too that sometimes as you run out, if you run through a spawn, you may actually trigger it,
Yeah.
but not notice it.
Yeah. You
Like
have to
it,
stop. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So like if you keep running, you might actually trigger that spawn, get the debuff, whatever, and then you're thinking you don't have it yet, and you run into
Yeah.
another one, and um,
I wasn't, so the like packs that are floating around, maybe the liquid one has this. I didn't look at it for this. But
mhm.
like a soak, don't soak kind of text recorder.
Yeah,
So I put one together for us that gives you an air horn when you've soaked. Like,
nice.
don't
Yeah,
don't
the
soak.
liquid has a sound when you soak successfully, and we also had one of our team members found another one. I don't know who it's from, but it's a dot in the middle. So it's basically like a circle that goes around your character, and it's
Yeah.
green if you need to soak, and it's red if you shouldn't soak. So
Yeah.
basically, you can. It's difficult to miss,
Yeah.
but no. So the only other thing that we found is that with dispels, sometimes if we're late on dispels, particularly
They
not
can
that long,
grow
if we're
over
late by like
the seeds.
yeah, they
Yeah.
grow. Yeah, the fires will grow over the seeds, which we've wiped, I think, twice to that at
Yeah.
least.
We had a couple
Um,
early wipes to that where like first dispels were a little bit messy as people got used to where they were supposed to position them.
mhm.
And messy means slow, and slow means that the fire grows over the seeds, and
Yeah.
then people like it's red seed and red fire, and they just don't see it.
Yeah, no, yeah. Because we actually took the time because we've been taking extra breaks. So basically, like we raid for 4 hours. So typically we took one break about 2 hours in. But with this fight, we've been taking breaks every hour. So we basically take,
Yeah,
three now for about 10 minutes each.
honestly, that's not a
Uh,
bad plan. Like,
No, 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 because it's for us, it's like the same fight, and we have found that like right around when we're about to break is when we basically have like maybe three wipes in a row that are P1 wipes, so people just doing stupid stuff. So there's
yeah,
like you can feel the loss of concentration there. Um, but yeah, no, oh, shoot, what was I gonna say? But we so when we did wipe to that once, the whole fire going over a seed thing, we went back and watched the replay because we have a couple people recording, and it's like you can't tell, even in like slow motion. It's like you see the seed spawn, and then when the fire goes over it, I'm like, I couldn't
yeah.
tell
Like,
that.
you can barely like they have like a gold glow at some parts of it, so like
Yeah.
technically it's possible to see, but like no, you have 5 seconds to do the seeds.
Yeah.
Um, there's 16 of them to do. They're not supposed to be in the fire. And if one gets missed because it's in the fire,
It's a
it's
dispel thing. Yeah.
yeah.
I like at
The
that point, it's
spells need
like
to be
you need to dispel
faster.
faster.
Yeah.
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 That's how we basically said
Uh,
it. So,
there's also like there's some one of the things that makes this fight I think fun compared to something like Fate Scribe is the degree of control that you have.
mhm.
Um, where like one of the things that we learned in is basically like around boss positioning and specifically boss facing. So the feather spawn locations are determined by boss facing. The mushroom spawn locations also determined by boss facing. So if you're
Gotcha.
tanking this fight, one of the things that you might run into is that the feather spawn locations can be kind of rough depending on where the mushrooms spawn. But if you
Mhm.
face the boss specifically, like I went through this on Friday, like our seeds or our feathers were spawning in bad spots, and it was like uh 3 of the 6 were in fire, and people were not happy about that because like they walk into fire and then they're laid on their feather and everything kind of falls apart. It's not great.
Yeah.
Um, basically, we had not even noticed that we made this change, but as tanks, we had changed to like kind of be tanking the boss facing like in parallel with where the dispels were happening.
Gotcha. Interesting.
And that means that we get the mushrooms, then we go and soak the mushroom, and that puts the boss facing at this 45-degree angle that makes the feathers spawn 3 in the fire.
Okay.
And so the way to solve this is actually to like 8 seconds prior to this happening,
Yeah.
you face the boss at a 45-degree angle. That puts the mushrooms at a 90-degree angle. And
God.
then, no matter which
Okay.
mushroom you have to soak,
Mm-hmm.
the boss facing is correct to put 4 of the feathers outside the fire comfortably in a way that like lines up with our diagrams for assigning the feathers and everything. So
That's awesome.
it's just like, but it's also something like that degree of control is
Mm-hmm.
nice. It's being able to figure things out and then go, okay, we're going to do this, and then actually being able to do it is cool. That's something that was not present in a lot of these other fights that people hate. You know, the Fate Scribes
Right.
and the Kel'Thazads and you know all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
That level of, yeah. I mean, yeah, you have a lot of, I'll say, a lot of control. And yeah, I mean, even with the like the difficult overlap pieces, like there is a way to handle all of them with enough experience, right? Like you
yeah,
never feel, I think you said this earlier, like you never feel cheated and
yeah.
like randomly getting some mechanic and it being bad for you. It's like as long as everybody's positioned well and knows what you're doing, then like you should be able to get through it. So
Yeah, I mean that difficult overlap in phase one, I think, kind of bullshit. It's really hard,
yeah, I mean it's
really,
hard.
really hard.
It's hard if you don't have the way, if you don't have ways to dispel the roots. I will say,
Yeah,
like, yeah,
the
like you
the I
basically
guess
need that.
the comp check on this side also bullshit. As a
Yeah,
group that only has one paladin,
yeah, that's enough. That's rough.
it's bullshit.
Yeah,
um, but I mean, we work around it. It's fine. We're
yeah,
fine. Yeah, Tindral's quite a fight. Quite
nice,
a
nice.
fight. You want to move on? We got a lot of stuff to hit before we
Oh
hit
yeah.
the 10.2.5 kind of overview.
Yeah, sure. And well, my Firefox just crashed, or is in the
Oh,
process of crashing. So maybe you take what's the first thing on the list since I can't see it right now.
yeah. So let's talk about Grinch. Grinch who stole
Oh, my
Christmas.
favorite thing. Yes. Okay. I'm so excited.
Yes. So Seas of the Discovery. Reminder,
Yeah.
max level 25 right now. People are doing a 10
Correct.
player raid, Black Fathom Deeps. And one of the things that's gone on is there are a number of items that on use, they're consumables, and they summon just like a pet to do damage for you. One of these is like a higher, like it's a level 40 item from Scarlet Monastery that people have been not huge fans of needing to farm to parse. One of them is from a rare drop that you can try and camp it, but good luck. Well, prior to what I'm about to talk about, good luck. Uh, and then there's the mechanical Grinch that you get for Christmas or Winter Veil or whatever. That is a 3-use item. So you can summon the Grinch 3 times, and that's it for the whole year. And I mentioned level 25, very specific reason. The Grinch, level 58.
Yes.
Um, little bit powerful. So in a very direct way, if you care about parsing on Warcraft logs in Season of Discovery, the Grinch stole Christmas because
Yes.
everybody was using it in BFD, and it basically meant that like as soon as people ran out of their Grinches, you couldn't beat those parses anymore because the Grinch was so powerful.
Yes.
So Warcraft logs this week banned Mechanical Grinch, Spiked Collar, which is the Scarlet Monastery item, and Dog Whistle, which is the rare. Or I might have those backwards, but the rare item. Um, and yeah, so now it's that involved banning like basically blacklisting a significant number of parses from like Christmas week. So
I thought you guys weren't gonna. I thought Warcraft Logs wasn't gonna do that, man. I thought I talked to my inside contacts. He told me, it's classic. Wow, we do whatever you want. And I was like, I agree. He's like, you hold world buffs in a reagent that they put in specifically for you. I'm like, yeah, I know.
it's
Um, no, I think
it's Yeah.
It's funny. I think the best part about this, right, is that like we talk a lot about classic and some of the stuff, like how it's so widely different than retail. Because I think parses are important in retail, but like you also have in retail, I think like your progression,
Yeah.
like you getting through
Just
the highest
completing
difficulty
it
con.
is hard. Even completing it
Yeah.
on heroic for a lot of people is
Yeah.
hard.
Oh yeah, I mean, what is it? Ahead of the
Ahead of the
curve is
curve. Yeah.
the heroic. Oh, what's up? Sorry, is heroic level thing. That, yeah, that's not a guarantee, right? Where it's like in classic, you are like, I am a testament to this. You can walk into any raid and you can clear it as long as you have maybe like half of the raid competent, right? Like if it's a 10 player raid, as long as 5 people know what they're doing, you can carry the other five.
Yeah.
25, if you have at least like, 12 people that know what they're doing, you can get through it. So it's definitely not difficult. But yeah, it's funny how much. So sorry. So the point here is like in classic, parsing is essentially the end game,
Yeah.
right? It's a combination of like individual parsing, and then and then it's also like speed running, I think, is
Yeah.
minor, but still kind of important. Because you guys like Warcraft log still has like the trash requirements, right? From a clear perspective that's in there.
Yeah, and
So
like we originally weren't gonna do like trash requirements and stuff. Like we were gonna do a lot of stuff for Black Fathom Deeps, because it's a level 25 raid. But I
yeah,
mean, it it turns out that when people like no shade, but when people know life a raid, um, they care about rankings and they want to have rankings that don't incentivize doing dumb stuff like using out of bounds exploits to skip the waterfall after the first boss without killing the
yeah,
first boss, by the way, and clear all of the trash in the raid, then go back out and kill all the bosses in one like 11-minute run.
yeah, yeah. That's so funny. No, yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's an interesting. It's just a different, I'll say, like community feel.
Yeah.
In classic than retail, but now this is, to be fair, it's a good change. I mean, like it basically means like for the rest of P1, anybody who parse this week with these toys, basically
Yeah.
you will, if you got a rank one with it, your rank one was safe. Because people couldn't catch up, or it's some really degenerate stuff of like holding on to charges of it until right at the end of P1
To
or
try
phase
and get
one.
it. Yeah.
You're gonna try once you have all the gear. So
Yeah.
no, I'd say it's a good change at the end of the day. But yeah,
It's
parsing in classic is just so funny, dude. They take
it is.
way too seriously, way too seriously.
Yeah, and there's a lot of truth to what you said about it being like because it's easier, parsing is the end game, but because it's easier, it's also a lot more accessible. A lot more people
Oh yeah,
participate in it. So there's a lot more of well, there's that, and it also enables you to do a lot more dumb stuff. Like you can let individual people. This was a big problem in World War, but you can let individual people just have all of the AOE trivially.
yeah,
It's completely trivial to let somebody do all of the AOE damage on a fight to kill all of the ads, and that's one of the reasons that classic, in comparison to retail, has always been uh much more boss damage focused. We'll say.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Whereas in retail, like we were talking about Tindral, being able to kill those treants before you die
Oh yeah.
is a
Well,
big deal. You
well,
do
it's like
not let one
yeah, like
person do that.
our Tindral thing is like you take every AoE talent you can. Like the more AoE damage you can do on Tindral, the better, because killing roots fast, killing
Yeah,
treants fast, like that's a part of the fight. So it's not padding at that point. It's really like
yeah,
how you do the fight.
yeah.
But yeah, it's I mean, classic gaming. It's fun. So yeah, you can no longer use these sort of overpowered toys. I'm assuming we'll have to find at level 40 the next set of overpowered toys that
Oh,
become
I mean, people are
available.
already talking about it. So, did you know that gnomes have a racial that gives them 15 increased engineering skill?
Yep. Which means
Um,
they get
which means that they get the mechanical chicken or the battle chicken, whatever it is, next phase. Nobody else gets it, just gnomes.
yeah,
For
yeah.
those that have not been keeping up with Classic WoW, Battle Squawk and the gnomish battle chicken is one of the most discussed items, just period. Just period. Because of it's I'm not gonna, honestly I'm not gonna get into it. It was a huge deal in TBC. It got like blacklisted. It doesn't work in Wrath, even though I think it used to in original Wrath, but people didn't do this shit in original
Yeah,
Wrath,
exactly.
basically. Uh
Yeah.
yeah.
Definitely a broken item. Definitely a broken item. Um but yeah, I always love this stuff about classic, about the min maxing people
Oh
go
my
to now
gosh.
all the info sharing and stuff like that. So
Speaking of classic, Ruby Sanctum releases this Thursday.
it does.
That's it.
I'm excited.
The whole story. Ruby Sanctum releases this Thursday. One boss raid. If you don't remember it, it's for a reason.
And so you know what? I distinctly remember this fight for the one reason that I tanked at the end of Wrath. And I remember this fight specifically because I have a video. I wonder if I have on my phone of me actually rating this, but it's a video of me playing. And so if you don't know about the fight, there are two there's two basically zones. There's
like
an upstairs and a downstairs.
Physical realm and a Twilight realm.
Yeah, Twilight realm. Yeah, and so like at a certain point in the fight, almost the entire raid goes in the Twilight realm, and you leave like one or two people up top, typically a tank and like maybe a healer up top, to quickly clear the Twilight realm and come back up. But during that phase up top, nothing happens. The only reason you want to tank up there is that
if you don't have the boss resets.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's either resets or like threat reset. So there's a chance when everybody comes up, people randomly die. Yeah. I forget the way. But in any event, I was the tank upstairs. So like literally, like there's a video of me playing like I don't know, Candy Crush or something on my phone, like on my iPad in front of my thing, not paying attention to the game at all, like in front of my desk, because it's just like I have 45 seconds to a minute of not caring about what happens. So that's my experience with Hallion.
Oh my god.
Ruby Sanctum. But yeah, no, it'll be fun. There's really, I mean, like anything, I think the only reason you go in there is there's really good trinkets. I think all 4 trinkets are because they drop a healer trinket, healer trinket, physical DPS trinket, tank trinket, and then caster DPS trinket. And I think all 4 of those, each trinket is best in slot for your specific class.
Is anybody going to use the tank trinket?
No, well, I guess that's right. Yeah, probably not.
No.
So sorry.
I'm reading this now. Yeah, this tank trinket's not getting used. Guaranteed. Like, all right, people will use it. Those people are going to get like green parses. Everybody else, all the other tanks are going to be using the melee DPS one.
Yeah. Armor pen and attack damage proc. So it'll be pretty good.
Yep.
But yeah, that'll be fun. I don't know. I'll let you know next week if we actually go in there and try and kill it. But yeah, Ruby Sanctum is there. Coming in. That's the final raid of Wrath. So we already know Cataclysm coming this summer. So we got a couple months of farm, and then we get some new classic content. So cool. So moving on, we do have a couple of retail things that happened. One thing in Mythic Plus is there was a hotfix to Waycrest Manor. One of the bosses there, the Soulbound Goliath, which is the big sort of tree
boss.
Yes, tree boss in the courtyard. They reduced the health on the soul thorns by about 35%. So if you weren't familiar with soul thorns, that is the mechanic on that fight that sort of pins a player. It gets cast on one player. They basically get spiked into the ground. You have to kill the spike to free them.
Yeah.
And I guess there was an issue with the scaling of this where
it really was like a check. Even like, yeah, it was a big deal. This is another thing. Like, soul thorns were an issue actually on this fight in BFA, and I didn't really do a lot of hierarchies in BFA. I've done more hierarchies now, but even then, I remember this being an issue, and just like they didn't do anything to solve problems in keys in BFA. It feels like, like what was the King's Rest? King's Rest was a nightmare for the whole expansion.
Yeah, like those trash packs. Before the third boss? Were always.
Yeah.
The charging mobs were always bad, and then I remember just having to we basically would try and skip as much of that trash as you could. The other problem with King's Rest was that it was literally there was no variation in your route.
Yeah.
It was
you either have a rogue and you get to do 100% trash, or you don't have a rogue and you get to do 150% trash.
That is true. God, even the mob before the final boss of King's Rest was like a raid boss.
What was it?
I forget the name of it.
Zool, the like aspect of Zool or whatever it was. Yeah, Shadow of Zool. Yeah, that thing. God. That thing was a nightmare. This was also all right. Last note, then we move on. that thing, this was right after they took all magic mitigation away from tanks, and that thing just spammed Shadow Bolt at the tank. That's all it
Dude,
did.
well, coupled with
I mean,
that,
okay, it
plus
did
it
other
had
things too, but it mostly did that.
well, the problem was is yeah, tanks got trucked terrible, but then also it did that AOE thing where it did
Yeah.
more damage the closer you were to it. So like I distinctly remember multiple times doing that dungeon and having to move from that one ability, and as I'm rolling as a monk, the tank dies before I can hit another heal on them because they take 2 shadow bolts and just are dead.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's just yeah, whatever. Screw that
Yeah.
place. I hope they never bring it back.
The
Do more
I
Grimral
wouldn't mind
Depot.
seeing them bring it back, honestly, with how much changes they've made to other dungeons, but they would need to do like Jadefire Monastery level changes to that dungeon. Like it is a modern dungeon that would need to be completely reworked. Almost
Yeah.
everything about it. Like the boss fights are fine. The
Yeah.
trash completely reworked.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. There's some weird stuff in there. Even the trash before the second boss. Like the
Just like
oozes where it's
everything in
just
that
annoying.
everything in that
Yeah,
dungeon was just
literally
fucked up.
everything. Yeah. Even the trash in the first boss room fucked up. Yeah, no, fair enough. Um but cool, yeah. So hotfix is sorry for Waycrest Manor for Soul Goliath. So hopefully spikes become less of an issue. Or not less of an issue, but less of sort of a massive damage check for teams as they go up in key level. So next up in terms of hot fixes, Fyrakk got some hot fixes, but not Mythic Fyrakk. Basically every difficulty other than Fyrakk, essentially all the flexible rate sizes,
Yeah.
got some changes. So I mean, just I think the biggest one, we'll go through all of them. Biggest one is a flame and now targets fewer players. So just from a scaling perspective, essentially one less player will get the a flame debuff, which I think is honestly, to be fair, the worst mechanic they've ever put in the game. Um, so we can talk about that once we start
Yeah.
progressing it. But
Yeah.
a flame, anytime you are
I
dispelling on
mean,
cooldown, is a bad design
it's
mechanic.
also like the way we were doing this fight in like our alt raids is
Hmm.
we would just get there and be like, okay, who wants to play healer on this? And just like somebody would go healer and they just would dispel. That's all they would do. Like at this
Yeah,
point, the other people that were like playing healers and like planning to be a healer on that character could keep up with the actual HPS check. It's just that you needed that extra dispel to keep
oh
people
yeah,
from like it just greatly reduce the actual amount of healing done. So even if that person contributed 0 HPS, like if they were playing, Holy Paladin, as if they were a ret paladin with a magic dispel.
yeah. I don't know. It'd be yeah. That's all you need. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we still 5 heal that fight because of the dispel
Yeah,
issue. Yeah.
yeah.
So whatever. It's stupid. I hate that fight.
Um,
So a flame, or I hate that mechanic, not the fight, just the mechanic. So flame hits fewer targets. I think scaling wise, it's one less over the way it works. So instead of having 2 every 10 players, it's 1 every 10 players or something like that. So essentially is one less, depending on your raid size. They also reduced the Screaming Soul health for smaller group sizes. So Screaming Souls do less health. Blaze damage does less damage. And then the Spirit of Kaldori health was also reduced. So the healing adds, need to heal them up less.
yeah.
And then the Corrupt Absorb, what is the Corrupt Absorb
There's
value?
random healing absorbers that go out.
Oh, those are the random healing absorbs.
Yeah,
Got it. Okay, that was also reduced for smaller group sizes. So in general, it seemed like they just sort of made Fyrakk easier across the board for the flexible raid
yeah.
sizes. So
And I think this was actually like pretty noticeable when we like Fyrakk in some ways got harder in the alt raid when we went from having like 25 people there earlier
mhm.
on with less gear to later on, fewer people show up. We have like 15 people instead of
Yeah,
25. And it's harder. The Screaming Souls, I always just assumed it was because we got lazier with Screaming
yeah.
Souls. But honestly, like maybe it was a health scaling issue all this time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It might have been. It might have been. So, but yeah, no, it's so nerfs to Fyrakk, if you guys are working on it now, probably makes that fight a lot easier. You get through it, and I know it probably means like we might only take 4 healers then because we still revive. Well, we typically revival like the going into the first intermission. This week though, I still had my Tindral spec on, so I only had Restoral, so that made it
Nice.
intermission a little spicy when trying to catch up on the spells. So,
Nice.
um,
Um,
well, cool.
One other
Sorry.
like kind of Fyrakk related thing, the legendary from Fyrakk. Fyr'alath, the Dream Render, got buffed again, and I'm actually a little bit hesitant to call this a buff.
Yeah.
So to kind of explain, all right, I'll get to what I think about this at the end, basically.
Yeah.
Kind of explain the situation. So Fyr'alath, when you damage things, puts a mark on things, and then you can use the active ability of the legendary to consume the marks and do a bunch of damage. The damage that you do scales off the number of marks consumed.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is, it would only scale up to 5 marks, but it would consume as many as there were. So if you're in Tindral and there's 16 roots out, and you have 16 or 17 marks out as a result, and you hit the Rage of Fyr'alath button, it consumes all 16, but it only gives you the benefit of 5. Obviously, that kind of sucks. So what they did is they just made it so it can scale up beyond 5. So it'll scale up to like 99 now or something ridiculous, which the kind of number that you're only going to actually be able to get if you go back and do something like Torghast.
Yeah.
So technically it is a buff. Practically, it's kind of one of those things where I almost would just call it quality of life. Like, it makes it so you're not shooting yourself in the foot on accident by using the cool active button of your item. Like,
Yeah.
It's a buff in extremely narrow circumstances. It's actually, I guess, more of a just straight buff in Mythic Plus, where you will pretty frequently have 6 or 7 targets in a pull. Like, that's very common. 6, 7, 8. And in those cases, you would kind of be wasting some of those marks by hitting the button. And that would be pretty common. But yeah, I mean, it's technically a buff. It's practically like very little change to the item. All right. Now, I have some thoughts on Mandel's been beating the like this weapon's underpowered drum, and like there were definitely like usability issues like this, quality of life issues like this. And I don't know, it's like basically the position that Mandel has been taking a while ahead in these posts about Fyr'alath and how it needs to be improved is the position that it should just be the de facto best thing. It should always be the best thing. It should always be correct to just push the button. Does not matter if you're like in cooldowns or whatever. It should just always be correct to use this thing. And I am like, I don't agree. I just don't. I just don't agree. It should be correct basically always to use this item if you have the item. It shouldn't always be correct to push the cooldown part of it during your other cooldowns, especially as they've done things like it's not correct, for example, to push Beacon to the Beyond or another trinket like that that has you stop and cast in the middle of other cooldowns. And this is the same principle. You're going to sit there and you're going to channel this thing. It's like Beacon to the Beyond or Manic Grief Torch or any of these things that make you stop and do something are just not correct to push during your cooldowns because they don't scale with your cooldowns in most cases.
Do you think it though? So I mean, based on that though, do you think it's right that as a melee class you have to stop and cast something?
I think it's acceptable. Like, it's far from the first time we've had an item that does this, right? You remember Draft of Souls in Legion, which was the same thing, but also uninterruptible. There's obviously Fists of Fury. We have I-Beam. There's a number of examples like this, like Convoke for Feral Druids. Do they still have Convoke?
It's a good question. I'm going to go with yes, but I have no idea.
Yeah, I have no idea. But like, you have a bunch of these like abilities that melee have that you either cast or you channel, and I think that's fine. And the fact that Fyr'alath is channel and you sometimes don't want to use it during cooldowns is totally okay. Like, he brings up this point that it's like, it's worse to push it during cooldowns than to not push it. And it's like, that's fine. Now, he brings up some Death Knight specific things where Death Knight is just a broken class in multiple different ways. Like, Blood DK is overpowered. I've been talking with a friend about this. Blood DK is actually just overpowered, and people Like it's
Yeah.
very skill intensive to really bring out the level of power that you can get, but it is just blatantly overpowered. I'm finally happy to just say that. But then there's things like Frost DK. If you're playing breath build, you want to one-handed weapons,
Mhm.
because the spec's just broken. Like not broken in like overpowered, just broken in like a fundamentally janky kind of Windwalker broken kind of way. Actually,
Right,
not
right, right.
Windwalker. It's not bugs, but it's like it's janky.
Yeah.
And so that resulting in Fyr'alath not being good for Frost DK is just like that's a Frost DK problem. Frost DK is the problem. The legendary is fine.
That's fair. Yeah, no,
Same thing. Like he brings up like Unholy DK in AOE. You hit a point where you just want to push Epidemic like at pretty low target counts, and you never want to
Mhm.
sit there and channel this. And it's like, great, that's an Unholy DK problem.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I would say is so I'm not I have know nothing about this weapon other than like what I've read, like how it works, and our blood DK actually got the item this week. So
I have
he's
yet to get
making
it.
it now.
Thanks.
Yeah,
We actually have 0 in our raid group.
that's not good. We've gotten so well. Sorry, let me just make my point. Then we'll talk about
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
of the loot luck that we are bad at. But no, I think my only thing with something like this, like a legendary, is I'm fine if there are certain situations where you shouldn't press the button, right, or use the item, right. But I think what I would want to make sure is like as soon as that moment is over, your next best thing to do is hit the button, right. Like if there's a specific situation where it's like if there are ads up, I should not hit my button, but as soon as ads are gone and it's just the boss, I should hit the button. Like if that's the correct play, I think I'm okay with it. Where like you talk about like an underpowered legendary or something like that, like if number one, if you're not equipping it at all, that's an issue.
Yeah,
But then the second piece is like if it has something you have to use, if you're just not using that component, that part of it, that's another issue.
yeah,
So yeah, I think I'm on the same page with you. It's like yeah, there's probably situations where there's other things out there that are better to hit because there will
yeah,
always be a better button, and just because it's legendary doesn't mean it always has to be the best button for every
yeah,
situation.
yeah,
But the inverse of that is like you just want to make sure the button's still worthwhile to push
yeah.
at some point.
Now, there is one more quality of life thing with Fyr'alath that Mandel brings
Mhm.
up that I 100% agree should get fixed, and that is that the channel is not hasted.
That's awful. So that's a Mistweaver Manatee, the original Manatee, the new Manatee that they put in was not hasted for the first iteration. It felt
Yeah,
awful to
yeah,
hit. Yeah, unhasted
yeah.
things are just annoying
And so that
channels.
interact like that does weird things where like haste, like instead of it being like if you have 0 haste, it's 2 GCDs that you're spending on this thing.
Hmm.
But if you have 30% haste on your gear, then you're actually spending like, I don't know, 2.5 or 3 GCDs on this thing. And that makes it relatively worse than if you're a class that doesn't play with a lot of haste.
Yeah. Well, also I'm assuming then like it doesn't get. Well, I'm not assuming. I read the article. Like anything during heroism, it probably ends up being
Yeah.
worse to hit
Yeah.
it also because you're losing even more GCDs
Yeah.
there with that haste. So
So it's
yeah, that's annoying. That should probably be
that one,
fixed.
like, and
Okay.
again, like, it technically is a power level thing, like, making it hasted makes it better. Yes,
Yeah.
okay, I'm on board with that. It's a quality of life thing.
Yeah. Unhasted channels in general, if you're particularly again, if you're a class that plays with any amount of haste, having an unhasted ability in there
Yeah,
is annoying. Like
yeah,
I'm fine with unhasted cooldowns on things. So like we like for Mistweaver release, like Rising Sun Kick, the cooldown on that ability is impacted by haste. The more haste you have, the lower the cooldown.
yeah,
Different than say Renewing Mist, which its cooldown is static at 8 seconds, right?
yeah,
So I'm fine with cooldowns being one or the other, but yeah, any sort of channel or cast like should be affected by haste. It
yeah,
just feels better. So
yes, yes.
cool. Yeah, we'll probably see more changes. I think this is the most changes any legendary's actually gotten. I'll be completely
Yeah,
honest. I feel like
granted, it's also one of the most complicated legendaries we've gotten in a while, right?
that's true.
We got the Evoker one, which was just a stat proc for people in your
Hmm.
group. And then what was the legendary? We had the whole legendary system in
Yeah.
Shadowlands, which doesn't count.
I don't consider those legendaries, so we can just skip over them.
Yeah,
They're
which
just
means
more
we have to go
powerful
back to
items.
like Warlords of Draenor to get proper legendaries again.
Yeah, which is then it's Fangs.
Then it's
Well,
the
no, MOP is
had
cloaks,
the
but
well, WAD had the rings, MOP had the cloaks,
that's true.
and then Cataclysm for Fangs of the Father and Dragon
Yeah.
Wrath.
And yet, yeah, that would be the last.
It's been a while.
Everyone gets, yeah, dude. Everyone needs to stop getting legendaries, man. I'm fine with something like this being in the game where like I just get to see my melee players have fun. So, um, but cool, yeah. Probably see more changes to this moving forward. I agree. Maybe they add haste to the channel or have the channel affected by haste, and maybe it's in a little bit better position. So, well, cool. Well, I think for the last maybe 15 minutes, we can talk a little bit about the new patch 10.25 comes out next week. So it'll be released on what is that, the 16th if you're in North America, 17th in Europe, 18th in the
Uh,
Asia region,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so it comes with a lot more stuff. We were talking about this at the start of the podcast, but there's a lot more in this patch than even I remember. And we haven't really talked a lot about it. So maybe we'll spend a couple minutes here if we have any overflow stuff we can add to next week's show. But there are a couple of big things coming in. I think the biggest one right off the bat, dragon riding worldwide. So you can now
Yes.
dragon ride anywhere, which also comes with the Switch too. Very similar to how like in Dragon Isles today, you can switch between dragon riding or like regular mounts. You can do the same thing everywhere where you'll be able to
Yeah.
dragon ride or do this. I think there's only one. What is it? So there's a couple zones that do not have dragon riding, and I believe it's Silvermoon City itself, like that
Yeah.
ghost. What is it?
It's
Ghostlands
it's
or something?
it's basically so in these areas you can't currently actually fly.
Either,
It's
yeah,
the TBC zones that were added to Azeroth. You
yeah,
cannot fly in. You also cannot dragon ride it.
yeah.
I think. Oh man, am I imagining things? Didn't they confirm that they are fixing that in next expansion?
I don't know if it was confirmed, but it's something they're looking at in
Okay.
terms of like
Okay.
essentially. I think the comment was they want to make Silvermoon a part of the continent.
Yes.
And so like the thinking there is the idea is like once it's a part of the continent, then like it's gets all the same thing that the rest
Yeah,
of
and
Eastern
so
Kingdoms has. So
for those that aren't familiar, on a technical level, those zones exist in Outland.
yeah, yeah. There's a portal you zone in. It has the BC port like loading
Yeah.
screen when you go into them. Yeah. Um, but yeah, no, so dragon riding everywhere. This is fun. This is awesome. It's cool too that you can flip between the two because there will be sometimes I can't wait to dragon ride in the old world, but I know probably after about a month, if I'm flying at all in the old world, I'm just gonna go back to regular flying
Oh,
because
I'm
typically what
done.
I do is I just AFK in a direction and like go do something and come back.
Well,
So
like I still use like I use the flight points in the Dragon Isles too. I will just like I'm gonna go just like get on the flight point to Iskara and just go AFK for 5 minutes, and when I'm back, I'll be there. You know.
I don't pay for I don't Uber anywhere. We call it Ubering, like in my friend group. I was like, I don't Uber anywhere. I'm driving
Oh my
myself.
gosh.
I'm saving that
Driving
money.
yourself straight into the sea is what happens if you do
Exactly. Well,
that.
I've definitely, I think in the grand scheme of things, I've probably paid more in repair bills,
Uh-huh.
particularly in the situations where I fatigue myself and then cannot
Yeah.
get my body back,
Yeah.
than if I just would have flew normally.
Yeah.
But yeah, dragon riding everywhere. I don't think, I don't, I didn't notice, I don't think there's dragon races coming in the old zones. At least just yet. I know they had the East, what is it? The Eastern Kingdoms had their
Yeah, Eastern
dragon riding
Kingdoms and
event.
Kalimdor Cups. I don't know if
Yeah.
those are permanent or going to be event based still, but
Yeah, I think that,
we'll
yeah.
see.
So we'll see. But that comes in, which is awesome. We also have the Azerothian archives, which basically is a bunch of like lore events around, or public events, sorry, around the Trader's Rest, which is a subzone in the Azure Span. So it's like southern Azure Span, basically to the east of like the whatever renowned people are down there, the Walrus people, I think they are, right? Where the
Yeah,
soup
the
is.
the Iskara.
Yeah. So just east of that, Trader's Rest, there'll
Or
be
the
some public events
wow.
there.
That's the name of the town, not the name of the anyway.
Yeah. I don't know. As you said, terrible at the lore.
Yeah.
But basically an idea there, or more sort of, we'll say, open world content, battle pets, mounts, transmogs as sort of rewards. No real power here, but some fun ways to explore the lore and hear stories of cool history.
There's
Maybe.
actually a lot of story content in this patch.
Yeah.
Like you talked about Azerothian archives, right? But there's also so reclaiming Gilneas. Uh,
Hmm.
this is I don't know all the details. This is like another like campaign quest, basically, to go and start reclaiming Gilneas for the Worgen. Or I guess the Gilneans. you know. And then there's also Dragon Isle epilogue content, which is more story quests. I still have not done any of the max level campaign quests, except for the ones that are like required to unlock the new zones.
Unbelievable. I hit 20 renown last week with the new whatever
Yeah.
dreaming people renown. So
So
yeah.
I mean, at some point, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna just like, I'm gonna sit down
Mainline.
with, I don't know, just like a big old pizza, and I'm gonna just play through all the campaign quests that I have not done. Because like, there's the initial stuff, like the tier quests that I did,
Yeah.
the initial ones where you're doing unlocks, and I never went back into the rest. It's always like I,
You get to the quest to kill the raid boss, and then you're like, I'm done.
yeah, I like the I like the story stuff. I just, like, if I'm sitting down to like play something, I'm not gonna lie, doing story quests in WoW is not what I'm picking to do most of the time. And it's the same thing in
Yeah.
Final Fantasy, actually. Like, I've been trying to get caught up on the raid quests there. And the only reason I'm doing it is the raid.
Yeah.
It doesn't help that like, okay, the Endwalker post patch story content, not as good.
Fair
Not as
enough.
good. Little bit worse. So it's very much just like unlocking the raids.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's I mean, it's just not the thing I'm gonna like pick to do with my evening most of the time.
That's fair. Yeah, no, that's true. I typically do it because I get the rep quests, and that's like the easiest way to get rep is to do the story.
Yeah.
So like I basically just want to get that rep thing done every week.
No. Yeah, I have not done the complete campaign quest or anything, but I have done the opening 3 sections of like both this and the previous patch one like 5
Yeah.
times each for those rep tokens.
I have I have not. I have one character in retail. That's all I care about. There's no way. No, I have enough. I have enough other rating and things to do in classic WoW, which I think is more important right now.
Oh yeah.
On my third raid character in season discovery. I'm so excited. That's what tonight is. Tonight's raid day. We do
That
3 raids tonight.
this is, by the way, this is why the like classic rules and stuff is so complicated, is because people like
Oh
and
yeah.
in some ways, like, okay, another brief aside, this is how raiding was in like Wad and Mop.
Oh yeah.
And Wad and Mop did not have like trivial bosses like classic does. Like, you know, you go and you look at classic raids and they're like 20-30 second long boss fights.
Yeah.
The Wad and Mop bosses are real boss fights, but it's still like the ability to just like, yeah, I'm gonna come in on like another character and just like play it on lots of characters
Oh
is
yeah.
completely different from retail. And that's also like, it's very interesting seeing that like even in Season of Discovery, we're like, all the stuff that we have now, like,
Yeah.
you know, repeatable content and gear upgrades and all of this stuff like Mythic Plus doesn't exist, and yet people raid Black Fathom Deeps quite literally 20 times a week.
Oh yeah.
Because
Yeah.
again, remember, that's a 3-day lockout.
Yeah. So you can do. Oh, dude, you can do it 3 times a week. If you, I don't know, I guess twice a week is the most.
Twice a week, a little over twice a week. Yeah, 3-day rolling lockout. You can do it. What is that
Oh,
like?
so awesome.
Yeah,
We'll do one tonight, and then we'll do one tomorrow night because it resets tomorrow morning. So yeah, no, it's classics fun. But cool. Maybe a couple more things before we end this. Coming in 10.25, we can get out of the get out of classic mindset. Follower dungeons are coming in 10.25, which I had forgotten all about these.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, basically what this does is allows you as a solo player potentially, or you and maybe a friend instead of, multiple friends can zone into any of the 8 normal Dragonflight dungeons. So this isn't like a Mythic plus or see even Mythic level content thing, but
yeah,
allows you to zone into those dungeons as a solo player with 2 other friends, and the additional players in your group will be essentially controlled by the game or bots or whatever.
yeah,
It can fill any number of roles for you. So yeah, it's fun. It's a good, I think, experience for people who may get nervous or may, WoW might be there might be their first time playing WoW and might feel a little uncomfortable in any sort of group content. Can go in and sort of do it by yourself essentially, do it with somebody you're really close to, um, and don't have to have the scrutiny of like playing essentially a multiplayer game with people who might not be nice to you
Yeah.
if you don't know what you're doing. So yeah, so that is sort of the follower dungeons are coming in. I might actually check these out just to see how smart these little
Yeah.
bot things are.
Yeah. See how the AI
But
is.
yeah, exactly.
I might actually do it because so I'm leveling a priest and it's like level 63 or 64 now. And so
Okay.
it's like the right level to be doing follower dungeons. Now it's a priest, so I have near instant queue times anyway for multiplayer dungeons.
Right, right, right.
But I'm at the point where I could actually try it on a character that is like level appropriate and everything.
Oh, I have a hunter, I think, around there. Maybe I'll do a hunter and test out the waters.
Um,
Um, but no, yeah, follower dungeons really cool, like new again, kind of solo, smaller group content than five mans coming into the game here. Which I assume they'll extend into what is it, War Within coming
yeah,
up here. Um, And then yeah, then I guess the final thing, if you're a troll or a Draenei, there are new customizations coming in with sort of hair colors and other things that don't matter because those two races are awful to play as. So no, I'm kidding. Um,
there's also you might remember when they did the Warlock pet revamp. Warlocks lost one of their customizations for the Observer. Um, you
okay,
could
yep,
no longer switch the model to, I don't know the technical name of the demon. You could switch it to a different model of demon
right,
from
yeah,
the basic one. Um, that is coming back this patch with continued additions to the Warlock Demon customizations in 10.2.5. So there's a bunch
I
of new
forgot about
ones,
those.
and it's also just like rolled into the same interface for customizing your Warlock Demon. So you just go to the barber shop and you can, right.
Oh, very cool.
So
Very cool.
well, actually, that's as far as I know. I don't actually know if they've done things like you must have this achievement or whatever. Kind of like Dragon Ready, like you must have this or that
Yeah,
to use this customization. But we'll see. Um,
nice.
yeah,
That's a packed patch for a .5 patch. I feel
yeah.
like.
Like you remember, like I mean, we were talking about WAD a little bit and like WAD
Yeah.
rating and everything. You remember the Twitter patch,
Oh, I
the
do.
selfie
Yeah.
patch? Like that
Yeah.
patch, it was like Twitter integration and selfie cam.
That was it. That was the only two things in it. Plus, like minor, like I think there was still hot like class change or whatever, like they always do.
Yeah,
But like, yeah, there was literally like they put in the selfie camera as that was the patch feature, and you're just like, and it wasn't like a .7, right? Like it wasn't like
yeah,
sort of an off content patch. It was yeah, one of their main content patches. Just that. No, I mean like I think we've talked about this a couple of times, even when we talked about the roadmap. Last week, and then I think a couple weeks ago we talked about sort of, I think Holly gave an interview about like the size of the Warcraft team and like all the content that they're pushing. No, I think it's if you like World of Warcraft, this is the best time to play this game, right? Like there is something for everyone, and like I've talked a lot about me personally playing Classic because I'll be honest with you, like retail to me is I'm invested in retail only enough to get through the raid.
yeah,
Like I don't care anything else about retail. And I'm to be fair, if I didn't play with people, like I didn't play with the guild I'm in, if I joined a new guild at the start of this tier, I probably would not be playing right now. But there's a level of like, these guys have a little bit of like want to see it through type thing.
yeah,
But no, I think to me, like Season of Discovery is awesome for me because it's um all of my like I'll say my friends that I've known for years have come back to play. Like
yeah.
we will literally have 10 people playing World of Warcraft in 2023, which is like the last time I had all 10 of my friends playing was probably like 2008, right?
Yeah.
Like
So
15 years ago.
like
So,
my uncle is the one that got me into WoW, and he played
mhm.
back in Classic and everything. And he's actually like playing WoW for uh like
That's awesome.
beyond. So he came back and we played Legion for a little bit, but then like he and like the other people in his circle of friends stopped playing within a couple of weeks, and
Hmm.
that's actually the whole genesis of how I ended up raiding. Is I ended up doing Mythic Plus solo and
Yeah.
then getting into raids through that. Anyway, but like same deal on like Shadowlands and to a degree Dragonflight. Um, although he did stick with Dragonflight longer after coming back to that. But Season of Discovery has been like,
Oh, it's awesome.
yeah, he's been having a grand old time with that, and you know, it is great. Like whatever, like I definitely prefer most elements of retail. I absolutely
Yeah.
prefer the leveling in classic. Like if I'm gonna go level, I'm leveling a priest because I want to play it in raid and dungeons.
Mhm.
I'm actually kind of like, I seriously considered for the first time just like paying someone to boost my priest. Like, people are in the services chat and they're just like,
Yeah.
we can get you from 60 to 70 in an hour. And I was like, seriously tempted to just like give them however much gold and uh
That is
and just go
awesome.
AFK for an hour and come back and be level 70.
That's so funny. No, yeah, I mean, like, there's tons of, yeah, there's just content for everything, which I think is awesome. Yeah, and it's fun to like play with buds and yeah, I mean, if you want a WoW experience, I think there's like at this point there's an experience for everything because I think Wrath still has like Wrath Classic still has a place and it's still
Yeah.
like the current classic sort of linear thing. I'll be interested to see. We always talk about, and maybe I know we're over here, but one final point is like I'll be interested to see what happens after Cataclysm, right? Because I think Cataclysm is going to be the litmus test for like, do people want
Yeah.
classic versions of WoW or do they just want the first three expansions, right? To like,
Yeah. It's also going to be an interesting one. Classic. So ICC, so there's kind of this ramp up in the difficulty and complexity of raid fights, right?
mhm,
And corresponding drop in accessibility of raid fights, where
right,
like classic raids super accessible, they're extremely easy. It's more about can you get to a high enough level to be
right,
able to actually do them, um, and put in like enough time to reach that spot, and then you can go and do it, and you can be successful at that. And it's just about time. And
yeah,
then over time, the difficulty ramps up. Ulduar is harder noticeably than prior content. ICT is harder than that.
hmm,
And Kata, it again starts ramping up the difficulty. Like infamously, the Kata heroics were a lot harder than ICC level kind of heroics. But the raids, like the difficulty of those continues to ramp up throughout Cataclysm and MOP and WAD. And um, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that. Like, do they tone down the difficulty? Do they keep like the normal heroic split? Do they like, what do they do?
yeah. I know it'll be, yeah, and I think the other thing too, you talk about just raid difficulty, but also the world becomes less deadly. Like I think
Yes,
Cataclysm is also
Cataclysm
where
is
it
where they
becomes,
neuter it. Yeah,
yeah, it's where it becomes the whole get all the quests in a town, run around for, an hour, and then go back to town and turn everything in, right? And then go to the next quest hub. And like it's a much more directed experience. Versus like I guess to be fair, Wrath
like
is fairly directed and
it's it's actually okay. I have so many thoughts on this, and I'm not going to get into all of it. The hub-based stuff is primarily TBC and Wrath. In Cataclysm, it's primarily you do have a hub, but it's like two quests at a time. It's like breadcrumbs. You do like a couple quests and a couple quests and a couple quests, and they're always in the same area. They're always together. There's no thought. Like you don't have to think about, oh, I'm gonna go, like it's fastest if I go here, then here, then here, then here, then here. It's like there's two quests, they're right next to you. They both go together and you do them at the same time, and there's no point to thinking about it because that's just how it's designed.
gotcha.
It's like design Cataclysm quest design is frictionless. There is never any friction on the player that like forces you to stop and think.
Hmm.
And it's
Yeah,
boring as hell.
that's fair.
It's
Yeah.
cool the first time you do it, boring as hell, and it's just like there's, yeah, all right, I'm not gonna get into it. I have a lot of thoughts about it. Cataclysm quest design did not hold up, did not
Fair.
hold up.
Fair enough. Fair. But yeah, no, well, I would just to wrap up this thought or my thoughts here. I'll be interested to see what they do because I think in my mind how the community reacts to Kata Classic will be will be interesting, and particularly like the rating community, right? Like, what is
Yeah,
their appetite for the difficulty increase, right? Because like, I mean, you just think to like the end boss is like Spine of Deathwing, and
yeah,
like the amount of coordination that fight needed on heroic versus like heroic Lich King is like you're not playing the same game, right? It's
yeah.
an entirely different experience, right? So yeah, well, we'll see.
Yeah.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun
Uh,
this summer.
One last very brief note, and then we'll wrap this up. More or less completely off topic from that. I've been, like I said, leveling that priest, doing a lot of dungeons.
Mm-hmm.
Ping system, great.
Yeah.
Just like you get into a Legion dungeon, tank clearly doesn't know what they're like. They haven't done it before. They don't know where they're going. You can ping. It's very like easy. It's
Oh yeah.
it's just like you can tell when people are like stopping and kind of looking around trying to figure out where they go, and you can
Yeah.
just drop a ping and just go, and there's no like you don't have to sit there and chat and like try and explain like, oh yeah, you need to go around this corner and then we go there. You
Yeah.
know,
Exactly.
you can ping specific things like Eye of Ajara. You have to kill the caster mobs before the
Mm-hmm.
second boss unlocks, and so you can ping the specific mobs that need killing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. But yeah, I guess it would make sense. Yeah, it makes communication so much easier.
So like I had never really thought
Nice.
about it for these, but it's actually really nice to be able to ping stuff in those leveling dungeons and be like, okay, we're gonna go here, then we go here, and then you don't have to ping. Sometimes the tank just knows where to go, and you just go,
Yeah.
and sometimes they don't, and you can like help them along, and hopefully not be too annoying with the pings.
That is awesome. Yeah, that's like I mean probably some of the main uses Blizzard thought of for that ability, right? Like we always think of it from like a raid perspective, but yeah,
Right.
no, definitely much just as useful in those lower level content things too. So
Yeah.
awesome. Awesome.
But yeah, I think that is going to bring us to the end of the episode for today. Thank you all for watching and or listening. And if you enjoyed this podcast and you want to support it and the work that we do over at the Peak of Serenity, you can do that over at our Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. I don't know why I enunciated it that way.
Good.
But of course, come and join the Discord. And it is the best place to show up and bully Anomoly.
It's rude. It's very, very rude. I'm
Um,
gonna log out. Done. Done with Discord.
ah, but you see, Discord is like a roach motel.
That's true.
You can log out, but you can never leave.
That is true. That is true. Somebody will ping me something stupid not to come in. So
Uh, but yeah, that is going to be it for the show today. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
bye.